Hey, welcome. This is our Star Wars, the original trilogy podcast. We're going to talk about how Star Wars changed us, why we love it, and why it changed our childhood, made us want to be fans. And then we'll get into some deeper ideas, some themes from the movie, like what inspired George Lucas to make the Jedi, the Force, and just some really deep, impactful moments from the trilogy. So we're pumped to celebrate Star Wars Month a little bit here. So one of you guys want to tell me, when you're a kid, like what got you into Star Wars in the first place? Oh, you've got your Millennium Falcon there.
This is a speaker.
I didn't grab any of my toys. Oh, I gave all my toys to you.
Yeah, I collected some of this. I have tons of those, and I wish I could have put my camera upstairs. So
oh yeah, I should have taken some pictures.
I could show those things off, but
he's got a nice room set up. He's not quite the uber dork that you might see online where it's like thousands of dolls behind glass cases and stuff like that. No, but he's got a decent collection.
I think I've got about 300 action figures, and I've almost got the entire original Kenner line from 78 to 85. I have 4 left that I have to get, and I don't have the money to buy these because they were so expensive.
There was one of them, a Jawa, that's like 15.
I don't have the vinyl Cape Jawa.
Yeah.
That one I don't have.
You never will have.
I have some of the variations though. I do have like the big head and the small head Han. What I'm missing is R2 with the pop-up lightsaber. I'm missing the Death Star gunner. I'm missing 2 Ewoks. That's it.
Yeah. That's it, man.
That's it. But they're like $500 a piece.
Did you ever have those rubber bendable figures, like the? They're not Stretch Armstrong, but they're bendable Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and all those.
I've seen those. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. No, I didn't have any of those. But I
cut their hands off with scissors like a dummy, so I ruined their value.
I had a bunch. Yeah, I was gonna say I had a bunch of those toys when I was a kid because I was the age, a little bit older than Drew, and yeah, no one ever thought about them being collector's items or anything like that. And by the time I was, let's see, Empire came out in 83, so I was 8. By the time I think I was 10, 11 years old, I had my first BB gun. And what do I shoot? Oh, that target's boring. Oh, hey, look at all these nice Star Wars toys and G.I. Joe and He-Man and everything that's worth like $200, $300, $400 now.
Yeah,
I destroyed with 20-cent BBs.
I've made it well known to my parents how much money they owe me from all the stuff that they threw out when I was a kid. So the collection that I have upstairs of these figures, I counted up that I had probably about 25 to 30 of them growing up. There's about 100. And I came home one day and it was like the Great Jedi Purge. Like Order 66 got called off by my dad and all my Star Wars was eliminated. And I held on to like 6 figures that they didn't get a hold of. So over the years, I've had to buy those back. And my wife has been very, I'll say, supportive. She doesn't get it. Like, I don't understand why you're buying this. I'm like, because it makes me happy.
She watches reality TV, so
right. Yeah. So I said, this is my childhood, and I'm just kind of buying it back. So I'm trying to get those back. I do have some of the original ships that I had when I was a kid. I bought those back, and then some. And then I have 2 glass cases upstairs, and I started really buying the figures again in '99 when the Phantom Menace came out. So I started buying all of those, and now I've got 2 glass cases up there, and probably close to, I'd say, 300 action figures total.
Wow!
So yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I like it. They make me happy.
So I assume that you got into collecting figures because of the original trilogy.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
That's what Doug and I grew up on. That was that was Star Wars, and that was it. There was only 3 movies, and Doug said he saw Empire in the theater.
Did
you see the original?
I saw the original.
Okay.
So I was 2.5 when the original came out. I guess that was
Wow.
December of 77, right? So it would have been, yeah, just 2.5, 2.25. My mom took me with her younger brother and my uncle. And she always told me that she took me. And again, I don't know if I fabricated this. I hear people all the time, oh, yeah, I remember when I was 1 and I did this. I was always like, but I do now. I don't remember going to the movie, obviously, or anything like that. But I do have these just weird flashes where, I remember sitting on my mom's lap and my uncle Tony, who was like, he was probably 17 at the time or something like that, 18, 19, right around there, was sitting next to me. And I just remember the lightsaber battle. And I mean, not even the lightsaber battle, just flashes of it. So it's like, I think I have memories of it, but I could have made it up. I don't know.
You were programmed by Star Wars movies
It's possible.
as a child.
And it was a big time. It was a big part of my childhood. Again, we had all the toys, had the records, had,
yeah.
And that was my thing until '84, and then Starfighter came out, and Star Wars is still my thing, but that's when I started like, oh, there's other sci-fi out there.
I did see the THX re-releases in the theater, but I wasn't born until '86, so I had to see them as a kid, and not even the special edition was out yet. It was just THX remasters, I believe,
on VHS. Yep, I remember those. Yeah, I saw Jedi in the theater. I remember my aunt took me to see Jedi, and all I remember about Jedi is just being terrified of Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah, I
had no clue what Star Wars was. I just know
what
I'm at a
is
movie
going
theater
on here.
And I remember being freaked out by him. But my cousins had the toys. They were older than me, and they had the toys. And then I started watching the movies when I was a kid. And I think Jedi is the first one that I really fell in love with. That's the one that I watched a lot. And then watched the original, and then I watched Empire. And I remember referring as a kid to Empire as the boring one.
100%. 100%. As a kid, you did not appreciate Yoda was so boring.
I know. But now, I mean, you can see my shirt.
It's so amazing. Yeah.
By hands down, my favorite one. But
100%. Until I was in high school, I was fast forwarding through. That's what we used to do as kids.
Fast forward and
we had to hit a button and hold it. I would straight up fast forward through Yoda scenes. Go straight to Luke and Leia. Fast forward, Luke and Leia. Fast forward, Bespin
Pisball.
Cloud City. Yeah. And then, once Luke left, everything was cool. Now I could watch the rest of it straight, but
yeah. But it eventually that one grew on me. But I used to watch these movies just nonstop. I had my own copies of them, and then I got the THX remastered versions that you talked about, and then I bought the special editions when they came out, and then I bought the DVDs when they came out. Now they're streaming for free on Disney Plus, so it's like I've got 5 copies sitting right here, but I never have to use them anymore because it's just accessible. But I mean, that was it. When I was a kid, going outside and playing, you play a lot of different things, but we always played Star Wars. We used to climb in the car, and that was the Millennium Falcon, and we would sit behind the wheel and reenact, the scenes from the movie. Or when it would snow, I would, go outside and pretend I was on Hoth, or I would take my action figures out there and set them up and play with Hoth. And heck, I even did that in high school. I got snowed in at a friend's house. He lived out in the country. There was nothing to do, and he had some of his old action figures and stuff. So like, let's just go set them up in the snow. And we took him out there and took pictures of them. And I think he still has those. So
Tony.
Yeah, Tony.
You all know Tony.
Well, yeah, he was here for the Christmas special. But it just became such a part of my childhood. And I think for a lot of our generation, I mean, those were the movies there was nothing that compared to those, from the adventure, the music, the locations, the characters. Everybody had their own character that they wanted to be. I wanted to be Han Solo. I thought he was the coolest guy. Other people they wanted to be Luke Skywalker.
That's probably me because of this lightsaber.
Yeah. But it was just that everybody who grew up in the 80s, I mean, it's just even if you're not a big fan, you've seen the movies enough to know them, and you can make the references and get it all. Even you might not be a huge super fan, but I just love it because it's such a great escape from when you're a kid and seeing these things.
Yeah, I mean, a big thing for me, and I'm willing to bet it's maybe unconsciously the same thing for Drew and most people who grew up in places like we did. Star Wars is about this young kid in the middle of nowhere who gets whisked off to this amazing adventure, right? We grew up in small towns. Now, I graduated with 48 people in my graduating class in 1993. Okay, that's not super long ago, but that's a small class. Drew may have had a few more than me.
I had 30, I think 32 or 30.
You had less than me. Drew had less than me.
In my graduating class, yes.
I
had 32 students.
I was in the 380s.
This is before internet. This is before online gaming, which is part of the internet, which makes sense. Why did I double that up? Anyway, we didn't have much to do. You could watch a movie if, by the time we had high school, we could drive to Danville and there was, an arcade there. But it just wasn't like the bigger cities and things like that. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have great video games. We're still playing, or we're still on the original NES. So
did you not play the Super Nintendo Super Star Wars trilogy?
Not when we were kids.
Well,
I was obsessed with that as a kid.
Yeah. I played them now because I can download them on my PS5. I have those downloaded, but I didn't know we had the old Atari to start off with.
Okay.
Remember the Empire Strikes Back Atari?
Yeah, on Atari. All you did was fly around the entire time, back and forth, shooting AT-ATs.
That was it. And then they brought out the Star Wars for Nintendo, and that game was hard.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, we didn't have much to do. So to watch this story, and that's why The Last Starfighter resonated with me so much too, was, as a kid, it's like, oh God, all this corn everywhere.
You're Luke stuck on Tatooine, basically.
Yeah, and it's just, you get bored sometimes. And, we did we had fun. I'm not saying we had a bad childhood by any means. I had a great childhood, but it was just like, what else is out there? I had this small town with a small park that had 3 baseball fields and a couple basketball courts and some slides that would burn you as you'd go down. That's about it. So you had to make do with what you had, and to see this story of this, so it's just like, oh, this is amazing. I want to do that. I want to, I think I even got a little military vibe in there a little bit. It's like, oh, maybe I'll join the army and I can go out and go different places and fight for my country. And then of course Top Gun came out in 85 or 86, and it was just like, I'm definitely doing this.
I'm being a Navy pilot. That's just it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you're a kid, a lot of that stuff where you find that movie that kind of resonates with you, that it's like, I want to be that. I want to get out of the small town. I want to go places and have great adventures and everything like that. And, I live an hour and a half from where I was born right now, but I've been around. So it's just like, hey, I'm not Luke Skywalker, but maybe I'm C-3PO. Just kind of say annoying things in the background, which is usually what I do.
Hey, that's your favorite character, isn't it?
No, I
love 3PO.
I can't stand C-3PO, but he's worse in the prequels than he is in
in the original trilogy, he was the narrator.
Yeah, you're seeing that through their eyes. Yeah.
He's there to tell you. So when he's obvious or says something that semi-annoying, but he has to, because he's telling the story. In the prequels and in the sequels, They just had to have him there because C3PO.
He's
So
famous.
it's more annoying than anything else.
Tony said something very interesting last night in a text. Apparently, he was watching episode 2 and he was sending a message to me. He goes, "You know, it would have cost George Lucas $0 to keep C3PO out of episode 2." Like, you're right. It would have. He wouldn't have had to cost him a thing to keep him out of 2. It made zero.
I'm trying to remember what he did in part 2.
They landed back on Tatooine.
Oh, that's
Here's
right.
the other thing. 3PO's working he's working on Tatooine on the Lars farm, right, with Owen. And then he just jumps ship and like takes off with Anakin and Padme, and then he makes one-line jokes after one-line jokes.
Well, it was Anakin's butt.
He's the Jar Jar of part 2.
And then in episode 4, he gets bought by Owen. And it's like, now I get why 3PO doesn't remember being there. His mind got wiped. But wouldn't Owen look at 3PO and go, "Hey,
oh, that's a good point."
you're my droid. Where have you been for the last 20 years?
Never thought
Do
about
they all
that.
look the same?
He looks a little different, but he's got the same name. His name is C3PO. Owen should have gone immediately like, "I am C3PO. You're my droid. What happened to you? Where you been?"
What happened to Anakin?
Yeah,
where's that other lady you came with?
You took off, and next thing you know, I'm raising a kid. What happened? You know,
We got to make that TikTok. Anyway, we're going back to the prequels.
we're supposed to be talking about the trilogy.
Yeah.
The good ones.
But anyway,
When I was a kid, I don't know what it was about Star Wars, but maybe just the world in general that I loved. I mean, I did resonate with Luke's story, and I thought having a laser sword was so cool. But the costumes, like the look of the stormtroopers and the ships were so cool to me. I was really into Super Nintendo, so that trilogy came out. When I went outside to like play in the yard, I would take my Nerf guns and my Super Soakers, and I'd look at the cable box, and I think it was like an AT-AT, but they're so small, But in my head, I was shooting at a AT-AT and a SD Walker and stuff like that.
Of course.
And I don't know, man. I loved that world. I loved the movies probably first, but then like what transitioned when there were no Star Wars movies for several years, what kept my interest in Star Wars like consistent through my life was the video games, because Dark Forces, the like Doom clone Star Wars video game, which kind of ties into the original trilogy, came out, and Jedi Knight. So I started playing those, and then Phantom Menace comes out, and I liked that movie okay at the time, but what I really loved about that when the movies came back was Episode 1 Racer came out on Nintendo 64, which I'm still playing. I was playing it last week. It's on Xbox now, so that's been some of my like stress relief, wind down before bed, play some Pod Racer.
I have played that one too. I see what kept mine after Star Wars came out is I started reading the books, and starting with the Timothy Zahn trilogy, The Heir to the Empire, Last Command.
Great trilogy.
Oh, it's the Thrawn trilogy. It's the first time you ever met.
Why wouldn't they just make
Thrawn.
that?
That should have been the sequel.
Why did they do anything else?
Even Shadows of the Empire. I like
Shadows of the Empire was really
that.
good. So I started reading those books, and that was, what kind of kept Star Wars going. It's like, new adventures, and it's the characters that and you're reading these books, and you could you hear the music in your head and the sound effects in your head when you're reading this. And then they announced that they're re-releasing the 20th anniversary in 1997. I was a senior in high school. Got super excited because I had never seen Empire in the theater. I've never seen Star Wars, the original, in the theater, and I was stoked with new footage. And the new footage was okay.
At best.
At best. I have got the funniest story.
Nothing about the remakes that improved the movie.
What about
I like the extended Mos Eisley scene. You see more of Mos Eisley.
Yeah, but it's
I like that, but
you could tell it's completely different than everything else, though.
Yeah.
CGI still wasn't there.
Right. It was more of a test to see if Lucas could get away with it for the new trilogy that he wanted to do. I have got the funniest story about seeing A New Hope in the theater in 97. And again, this is involving Tony. I
I
wish
know
he
what you're
was
gonna
here.
say.
You know about this one? Did I tell you about this?
I think Tony's told me a couple times.
We're sitting
Tell us.
there in the theater, and we know this is a special edition, and they're adding stuff. And to this point, they're still on Tatooine. They haven't added anything yet. And it's the iconic scene of Luke is walking out to look at the two sunsets, right? And some doofus behind us. You could hear him whisper to whoever he's sitting with, going, "Hey, look at that, 2 moons." And Tony and I both just kind of look at each other like, 2 moons. He goes, "Is that new?" Tony turned around and went, "Why are you here?"
Tony is
Oh my
the most
God.
brutal minister I know.
I know.
That dude is a minister of a church, and he just turns around and is like, "What the?"
Yeah,
I mean, he didn't
why
swear,
you-
but he just turns around straight to his face.
Oh
Why
my
would
gosh.
you ask that?
So,
First of all, they're sons.
They're sons for the first, and no, they've always been there. And he likes to say that about people when they're asking a bunch of questions about Star Wars. He'll go, "He doesn't know. They don't know." Or if somebody says something deep about Star Wars, he'll go, "He knows." But those two people, honest, they didn't know. They don't know Star Wars. It's like, why are you here?
It's funny that you say that though, because the original Star Wars movie as a kid, like that scene is burned into my head. And I'm a kid. I'm like, "Oh, 2 sons." I mean,
Yeah.
it's a silly little thing, but I don't know, it got my imagination running or something. Oh.
Now there's and I know we're just kind of going with this now into the film and stuff. And I'll have Doug talk about this because he mentioned this off of camera last time that we were together. Talking about the special editions comes out in 97. They're adding the Jabba scene. Originally it was shot with some Scottish guy in a fur coat. And then they put, the CG Jabba over it, which wasn't done real well.
No, it was really bad.
They added more of Mos Eisley, which was cool to see more of the city. But again, as Doug mentioned, it's CGI compared to the practical stuff. And that's really all they did with Star Wars. I think they changed some of the dog fighting. They touched and cleaned it up a little bit so the ships fly a little bit better. And that
I'm
was
fine with that.
the explosion
cleaning it
was
up
better.
is
The
different
explosions
than
did look better.
adding
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
But-
when they throw that ring around it right at explodes and everything. You got that shockwave. That's cool.
It was cool. But there was one thing that they missed out on, and I'll let Doug talk about this, but if you're adding scenes, because they extended a scene with a pilot in their hangar who knows, like Luke is there and he's talking to Biggs, and you see another pilot come up and he knows Luke's father, and he says, "Oh, if you're half the pilot your father was, you're going to be okay," or whatever, and they put that in that wasn't originally in the theatrical release in 77. But there was a scene that they actually filmed that would have been perfect to put into this movie, and they completely missed it. And the only way you can see it now, I mean, you can get online on YouTube and watch it, but it's the first time we see Biggs, and we know who Biggs is. So it's not such a surprise at the end of the movie where you're going, "Who's this mustached guy?"
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that was the thing that got me, and it got me all the way until I saw it on YouTube, because it's just like this weird situation where Luke's just walking around, all of a sudden he runs over and hugs this guy that it's like, who's mustache guy? Who is this? And then he's like, "Oh, Luke's the best fighter, or best, I guess, pilot on Tatooine," or whatever he said. And it's like, who is this guy? And then he dies. And you see Luke is upset about it, and it's like, well, Luke obviously knew him. I guess maybe he was earlier in the movie, but yeah, until we were in our 30s, it's like, who is this guy?
Yeah, we knew Biggs was mentioned one time early in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "I need you for one more season, Luke. You can't leave yet." And he said, "That's what you said when Biggs and Tank left." Or Biggs is right. I'm never getting out of here. So he said the name.
Yeah, but
if
you don't pay attention.
But it's just in passing. Like, you don't pay any attention to it. And then later on, you're like, "Oh, this is that Biggs dude he was talking about."
Yeah, but there's this great, and it's a really cool scene when you look it up. Luke is at a club or something, getting a drink.
Tashi Station.
Was he at Tashi?
He was at Tashi Station.
Oh, okay, right on. And they hear that there's a battle or something like that.
He was looking in his binoculars and he could see the opening battle of the ships, and he ran in to tell Biggs.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
So they come running out and they're looking, they talk a little bit, and Biggs is about to go join the Empire. And then he confides in Luke. He's like, look, once they get me off planet, I'm bailing and I'm joining the rebels. And that's what kind of inspires Luke. It's like, oh, I've been wanting to do that. Now my best friend is doing this. I need to push this through. I need to do this. And it was just kind of a cool scene because it explains what they're doing, how they have to do it. I mean, these guys want to fight for the rebellion. And to do that, they have to join the enemy just so they can get off the planet and get somewhere where they could jump in with somebody else and then leave. Because everyone who lives on Tatooine's broke. You know,
that is a cool idea.
Yeah, the only reason Luke got off was because Obi-Wan knew that he could get all the money they needed for Han. So yeah, it was a really cool scene when I saw it. It's like, oh, I wish they would just clean that up and throw it in. You might as well at this point.
And it's so much more serious too than the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm. They actually introduce a couple other characters. You know, a couple of their friends are there too. They have a couple lines.
Cammy, which if you've watched, I know all this stuff. So if you watched the Book of Boba Fett, there's a scene where he goes into this bar and he takes out these biker gang who are picking on a guy and a girl, and that's Tank and Cammy from A New Hope, from the cutscene.
Oh wow!
They had actors come back and replay those same characters, years later. Cool. But yeah, that would have been a really interesting. Here comes the cat, of course. So
it wouldn't have changed the movie, but it would have brought a little bit more information. It would have,
I like,
it's not just because they knew what was going on. They, even though they're out in this distant planet, out in the middle of nowhere, living in a desert, out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the farthest point away from anything, they're still interested in the world, so, or the universe, I guess, in this case. So yeah, it just adds a little bit to it.
So remind me, because if there's one I was the haziest on, it is A New Hope. I mean, I've seen it numerous times, but I loved Jedi and Empire so much that, the first one, I liked it, but it never resonated with me quite like those other two. So without that scene, explain to me why Luke really wanted to join the rebellion.
He just wanted to get off of Tatooine. He wanted to do something. He kept talking about going to the academy, which is the Imperial Academy. And I think Aunt Brew actually said, all of his friends have gone. So apparently Biggs wasn't the only friend of his who left. Everyone's taken off and getting on with their lives, and I'm stuck here trying to suck water out of a desert planet and drinking blue milk, and I've had enough of it.
And why is he against the Empire too? I mean, I assume since they're kind of a dictatorship that they're just kind of a controversial, evil machine, right?
It has a lot to do with, they live on like the Outer Rim, and it's kind of a forgotten area. But even out there, people are they're poor, and there's an imperial presence that still comes in and, isn't helping them in any way. And I'm sure
this is Rebel Moon.
Yeah. So it's just, that's why he doesn't like the Empire. He knows that they're not good. He knows that they're the way that they are treating the citizens and the people of the galaxy. So he wants to do something to make a change.
And it's his duty. Remember, this movie was written back in the early to mid 70s, not that long after World War II. I mean, we're talking less than 30 years. Mm-hmm. So, and he took a lot of story, I think, obviously the Empire, they were the Nazis.
Yeah, they're modeled after German uniforms.
The Nazis.
You can see it on the uniforms. Yeah.
But he grew, George Lucas grew up in a time where that was your duty. Because I do it about twice a year, I just finished Band of Brothers again. And it hit me the very first episode. I can't remember exactly what character it was, but he was talking about his hometown And when World War II started and everyone went over, 21 men from his town committed suicide because they couldn't go to war. They were either flat-footed or, had metal pins in their arms or something like that, or, asthma, whatever the case is. It was, I think it was somewhere in the 20s that took their own lives because they could not defend their country. So I think that would, it's kind of the same mindset with him. It's like all of my friends are going to fight this evil thing and I can't. I need to get out of here. I need to do this because it's my duty. That's what I'm supposed to do. All my friends are doing it, and now I'm the only one left. So I think, that was just the mindset of little small areas like that. Once I'm old enough, I need to get out of here and go fight for my country.
And is that supposed to be kind of like when a guy has a platoon and he loses all of his platoon mates? He feels this guilt for not being there, either for
survivor's
not dying
guilt.
With them. Yeah, either for not dying with them or for surviving. Yeah.
That's a big thing too.
Is that tied into Luke's plight here?
I don't know if that is. I don't know if how many friends he's lost. He just knows that they've left.
Yeah.
And chances are, if you join the Empire at this time, you're not probably in a whole lot of battles because there's no one really there to fight you. I mean, there's these rebellion, but there's small little pockets here and there. So there's not like any all-out war going on at this point. So if you're signing up for the Empire, you're going to go get stationed on some planet where you just tell people to move along and, whatever else they do.
With your guns, like a stormtrooper.
Right. So I don't know how many friends he had lost. But he definitely has that guilt like he's missing out.
Were the troopers originally clones? Or did that get added in the prequels?
So when A New Hope came out, they weren't clones. They were just people. And they mentioned the Clone Wars. And, of course, everyone's sitting there going, what are Clone Wars? What is all this about?
He may have wanted to start with episode 1.
Yeah. But the way it is now is that they were clones, and then when the Empire became Empire, they started with the clones and they started bringing in regular people and started phasing the clones out eventually. So by the time you get to about 10 years before this movie takes place, the clones are pretty much done. Plus all the clones have accelerated growth, so they age faster. So there were no clones by the time Star Wars rolled around. At that point in the timeline, there wouldn't be any clones left.
How fast do they age?
I mean, accelerated growth, where within a couple of years they're teenagers.
Oh, no, never mind. I was about to say, Boba Fett, but he was normal. He
was unaltered. Yeah. I mean, if you guys get a chance, if you watch The Bad Batch, it's an animated series on Disney Plus, and it's about a clone group and what happens after Order 66 and how the Empire starts to take over. It really does explain what they do with the clones. They just phase them out. Like, you're not needed anymore. We're going with these guys now. You
mean they retire them, or they retire them?
They just decommission them. And now the clones are sent out to do what? Go be yourself. Die? They don't die, but it's just like you're out. You go live your life now.
Okay.
But they were programmed to be soldiers, so they don't have any other thing. That's all they know is to be a soldier. So it's like it's a really hard life for them.
They're like a Black Ops, undercover experiment, almost.
Yeah, a little bit. So,
well, do you guys want to get into the Jedi? And I mean, did you think they were like the coolest thing ever as a kid?
They were mysterious because you didn't know anything about them. You knew they could raise things up with their hand and make noises and choke. And Vader could choke people, and the Emperor could shoot lightning. And it was really fascinating and learning, like, trying to picture what a Jedi Knight was. Obi-Wan tells us, there was all these Jedi Knights and we were guardians of peace and justice. And then, this is what happened. And the Emperor hunted us all down and killed us. and now there's no more Jedi. And, you know, learning from Yoda, and it's like all being a Jedi is lifting rocks and standing on your head. And, you know, but it was cool to see that only certain people, you know, had the ability to do the Jedi thing.
Or so we thought.
And it made you wonder, like, what were all the Jedi like? Like, what was this going to be? Like, what, you know? And then we found out with the sequel trilogy that Jedi were really cool. I mean, it's awesome to see all these Jedi do Jedi things that you had never seen them do before. I don't care for the midichlorian thing too much, but I mean, basically everybody can be force sensitive. You just have to, the more you have, the more you got. And I hated that explanation. It's like either you can do it or you can't.
Yeah, that was the problem.
That's the one I wanted.
George Lucas told his story for the first 6, and then Disney came in and told 7, 8, 9. It was like,
well, the midichlorians were in 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, and I wasn't crazy about it, but I'm still okay with. I'm better with that than I am with what they did in 7, 8, 9, where everyone could have it. You know, I mean, what
that was a very popular
theme.
Well, it just shows that he's force sensitive and that he just hadn't been trained. I mean, there's still going to be force sensitive people in the galaxy, whether you're trained as a Jedi or not. Weren't they saying that
anyone could be technically with that?
Kind of in a way. The way I look at it is, it's like, you know, just because you have the force doesn't mean that you have to be trained as a Jedi.
Right.
Some people have it and they just don't need to be trained. And I think that's what Luke was trying to say. So they showed that little boy like, hey, look, I've learned kind of how to use the force, but I'm not being trained as a Jedi. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of funny because, you know, it was just Obi-Wan, and then it was just Luke and Yoda, and then it was just Luke. And as these stories are constantly getting told now, it's like everyone like of the new shows
survived.
Somebody's got the force. It's like, I want one without people having the force.
Well,
like Andor, there is nobody has the force in Andor, and I enjoy
other than Darth Vader, Rogue One.
Yeah, and that was fun.
Which
but it's like a lot of shows is like, you know, with the sequel trilogy, it's like Rey has it, Finn has it, possibly a few other people have it. Mm-hmm. It's like Lando's daughter has it. I'm like, what?
Is that Lando's daughter?
Yeah, it's Lando's
Did they confirm that for sure?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
But you have to read other stuff because they're not just going to tell you.
Right.
Just like we don't know how Maz got Luke's lightsaber. We're never going to tell you. I don't want to even talk about that. We're talking about the good stuff again. Come on, we're getting sidetracked.
Yeah, we're on the good part. We keep wanting to go to the bad. So
tell me about the inspiration behind the Jedi for George Lucas, because we know this was an intentional way for him to explore some spiritual ideas that he had on his mind, right?
Yeah, he looked into a lot of different religions when coming up with the Force and the way the Jedi would be portrayed. What was it? Not the Last Samurai.
Seventh Samurai.
The Seventh Samurai has a lot of influence on the way they look, the way they fight. It's just he just went around, looked at a lot of religions and got the spirit. It's supposed to be the spiritual, you know, it's almost like it is a religion. The Force or the Jedi is a religion.
Technically, it's a real religion now.
It really is. You can actually say your religion is Jedi.
Yeah, I've read about that. And Matrixism. Yeah.
Oh, really?
You know Matrix too? Oh, God.
Yeah. So it was definitely very spiritual thing for him. The way he wanted to portray the Jedi Order. They're almost like monks, you know. You live your life in a Jedi temple instead of a convent or a, you know, wherever monks live.
No personal pleasures, no families,
no attachments.
Yeah, no, that stuff got really. When we learned more about that, we learned that they had these rules, and that's when things got really interesting because they had made like an institution out of the Jedi religion, which to some extent was their downfall. But in the original trilogy, like we didn't know a whole lot of that stuff, but you could tell by looking at them that they were probably inspired by monks, samurais, things like that. Although I can see shades of like Judaism in there and I mean, a lot of
Oh,
Eastern
sure, yeah.
religions, but people forget, because sometimes they'll say, you know, me being a Christian, I always see these parallels and things like this. But people forget that Christianity is born out of the East. So we think of that as a Western religion,
Mhm.
and they'll separate it from Eastern, and those two religions don't necessarily get along, right? Eastern and Western. But I mean, Judaism and Christianity come from the East. So a lot of the ideas that are here with the Jedi, they don't necessarily reflect maybe some of our modern traditions, but they do kind of reflect like old school, ancient Old Testament period, and stuff like that. And there is, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of a will of the Force, right?
Yeah, they talk
Like,
about that a little bit.
it's weird. It's like, does it have a mind? Does it not? I take it like it doesn't, like it's not personal, like how we would see God or something. But if it has a will, then, well, that kind of makes you wonder, is it just a force that binds us together, or does it actually have some kind of desire or intelligence?
It says, let the Force guide you. You know, open up and let it guide you and let it take you wherever. So it might have a little bit of that. Now, originally the Jedi were going to be the guardians of the wills.
Yeah.
And they mentioned that in Rogue One. You know, that's what you know,
The blind guy.
he was a guardian of the will. He had Force powers. He was never trained as a Jedi, but he still followed in the Jedi ways. So the original story treatment for Star Wars was there was no Jedi. It was, you know, this is taken from the Guardians of the Wills, a journal in the Guardians of the Wills. And they were based on, you know, one of those, you know, types of religious cultures, you know, of where you're talking about too.
Yeah, the only real difference, I mean, because I could see, I mean, regardless of what religion you are, like I said, I see things in this movie that make me think about God. I see them in these movies. There is a difference, though. There is this thing about balancing the Force, which we always had trouble figuring out. What does that mean? Because Yoda's talking about needing to bring balance to the Force. Well, does it have to be half good, half bad? Like, what does that mean?
That seems balanced.
Have...
I think we talked about that last year.
Yeah.
And
so that is more of a Hindu, probably. Well, I don't know enough about Hindu to say that, but I get the idea that that's a more of a yin yang, Eastern Asia type of religion.
Yeah. And you were mentioning before, you know, is the Force something else than just that? You know, I remember, I mean, in episode 1, Anakin's mom just had him. You know, there was no father. There was
yeah, he's a virgin birth. Yeah,
he's a virgin birth. So she was impregnated by the midichlorians, I guess, or something like that. So that seems to make us think that maybe the Force is a godlike being, and they don't pray to it; they just feed off of it.
Yeah, and another interesting thing is in the Clone Wars series, there's a father, a son, and a daughter on this planet. And if you watch the Ahsoka, they kind of mention this a little bit. There's a father who is always trying to keep the balance between his children. His son represents the dark, and his daughter represents the light. And the father is in the middle, and he is trying to always keep them in balance so one doesn't get too much power and the other doesn't get too much power. So you have to have it. It's almost like the holy trinity of the Force. And Anakin, in one of the episodes, he goes to this planet with Ahsoka, and they're trying to coax him into becoming the son, and Ahsoka is going to be the daughter, and Obi-Wan is going to be the father. And they mention that now in the Ahsoka trilogy, that there's a guy who used to be a Jedi who's just kind of gone rogue. He's not necessarily Sith, but he's trying to get to that place where he could be the father. He has bigger plans. He wants to be the father of the Force, and he wants Ahsoka to be the daughter. And so that's another take on what it means to balance it out. You have to have that equal one side can't be too powerful.
So I could even see.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. No, that goes with episode or the prequels.
I was gonna say I could actually see a way that could make sense, because like, okay, if you're a dad, you're God, you made humans, you made angels and you made humans, right? And you're trying to get them to not kill each other, but allow them to have freedom of choice at the same time. So you allow them, you allow the evil to exist and see if humanity plays itself out in a positive way. But I like, it's like a dad trying to get his kids to get along, and you can't just eliminate the bad ones,
Yeah.
Like they're still your kids. I don't know. I couldn't figure out how to make sense of that. What is balancing the Force to George Lucas? That is an option. That is an interesting option.
No, I remember, we talked about that in last year, that, a lot of people felt the Jedi Order, the good, was getting too powerful, and they were making different wrong, decisions that affected them and not affected everyone else.
They became kind of corrupt.
Yeah.
So is it almost, and of course then it goes the other way, where the Empire gets too corrupt and the Sith get too much power. So is this a sort of an opera, space opera, to explain how power can corrupt if it gets too... I mean, I guess not, because Luke had the chance to take that and he didn't.
Right.
But maybe that's how he brings balance to the Force.
This trilogy doesn't even talk about balance to the Force.
Yeah.
There is no balancing the Force in this trilogy.
They didn't do that until the prequels?
That's all.
Because in my head, that was like an idea. I took that into
This
Jedi.
is how we can tell which era of Star Wars you grew up with. Because you associate with everything that you're hearing or you're thinking about goes back to the prequel trilogy, which is the one that you kind of probably grew up with a little bit more. There was none of that. There was none of that. There was no talk of balance. There was no talk of anything.
Yeah.
It was all it was the Emperor has Vader, and now he wants Luke because Luke's more powerful.
Yeah. See, maybe I blended them together because episode 1 came out when I was about 12 years old. I was in 6th grade, but I had already seen the original trilogy. I saw Empire in the theater. I saw the original trilogy over and over again. However, apparently some of my prequel knowledge has seeped into, because I was older when I went to the theater for them.
Well,
and so I remember
we were kids when we saw the original trilogy, and we were well into our 20s when the new trilogy came out. So we spent 20 years analyzing the original trilogy. So when they start throwing out balance of the Force, midichlorians, this, that, and everything, it's like, what is all this stuff? But when you watch episode 1 as a 6th grader, and you've seen the original trilogy a lot, you haven't analyzed it for 20 plus years. You've seen
my brain couldn't do that yet.
Yeah, 6 years or whatever. So when you watch the original trilogy, midichlorians, you just don't think about that being a weird word that just popped up out of nowhere like we did. It's like, oh, that's what it is, and it's easy to associate it. So
we basically had to relearn everything.
Probably made the original trilogy better for you. Because, when we watched episode 1, it was amazing. When we went and watched it the second time, it was still pretty good. But by that third, fourth time, it's like, man, Jar Jar is awful.
Can we just get to the lightsaber fight?
And then it's like, oh, wow, yeah, that kid cannot act at all. And of course, 2 weeks later, Sixth Sense comes out and Haley Joel Osment kills it. And then we find out he auditioned for Anakin. It's like, how did you pick this kid? No offense. I mean, again, I'm going with it's George Lucas's fault for directing, not being able to direct a child to act. But still,
Okay, I'm reeling us back into the original trilogy.
Keep going to that. So
come on.
Anyway,
I'm gonna keep us in
I can't. I'm just sorry. I keep going back to that. So anyway, that's why I think that resonates more with you, because you were able to put those together at a younger age, which, like I said,
that makes sense.
Probably made the original trilogy better for you.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to like Empire. Let's talk some Empire.
Okay, yeah, we should probably talk about the best of the 3, of the 6, 9, of
Empire.
however many. Yeah,
I both have a favorite section, and I also have a theme that I think is meaningful, but it's not my favorite part. So, what do you guys have?
I love the Empire Strikes Back because I love the locations. But I think, like, if I could go anywhere in the Star Wars galaxy, I want to go to Cloud City. It is like my favorite place. I love it so much that I even tattooed it on my arm.
Oh,
nice.
So, I would love to go to Cloud City. There was something about Empire, like, when you're a kid and you're watching it, I thought it was, it was the boring one. When I got to be a teenager and I started watching it, then it's when it started to hit me how really good this movie was, because you're really starting to get to know these characters now. In the first one, there wasn't a whole lot of, real big time character development, but this one they slowed it down, and now you're really getting to see the different sides of Han Solo. You're getting to see Luke starting to mature, and instead of being that whiny little brat, and now he's still a little whiner, but you can see him starting to get a little bit stronger with the Force, and Yoda, this little tiny Muppet that can, lift an X-Wing and stuff. It was just so cool to see all this stuff. And then to have at the end of it, the bad guys win. You're like, what? That's awesome now. So it's just, the Empire just was brilliant. And it was directed by Irvin Kershner, who really knew what he was doing. So much better than the way George directs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, as an adult going through all the Yoda stuff and really paying attention, and it's like, oh, okay. All this talk about, how you can fall to the dark side and have to keep, it works with us today. You got to keep the hate out of your mind.
Yeah.
With all this stuff going on in the world, it's like there's so much hate out there that people are doing things, and I'm not saying either way. I'm just saying people are doing things because I think they feel it's right in some cases. I think in some other cases, people just don't know what's going on, just showing up to do stuff. But most of the cases, I'm going to say people feel they're doing right.
Yeah.
And but they're going into it with hate, thinking that, okay, there's going to be somebody there who doesn't agree with me, and we're going to just destroy them. And, that's kind of what Yoda was saying, is you got to keep that hate out. When you meet Vader, you're going to have to fight him, and you're going to have to defeat him, but you cannot let the anger take over. And it's such a great message.
Oh, it is.
So that's what made it great as an adult. As a child, though, I love, and that's, I'm not going to go there. But I love the chase with the Empire and Solo. Because, that whole story took up a good hour chunk. And I don't know why, but as a kid, and even today, I daydream it every once in a while, to be in that dire situation where it's like, I have a Wookiee, a princess, and 2 droids to fall back on, and that's it. I have no more help. So I've got to step up. I've got to, the 5 of them have to step up and do something. And I really like that. They're hiding, he's flying, going through the asteroids, and then goes into this cave. And it's like, okay, now we have some rest time. We got to sit here and fix, but we got to be quiet, and we got to keep an eye out, and we got to do this. What are these things hanging off my ship? It was just I loved that chase scene, and then all in all, they get out of it and they're safe, and that's great. So that was really, really cool to me.
Yeah, I've always been about like movies with intensity and like dire stakes. And maybe that's why I resonated more with Empire and Jedi than the first movie, even though it just seemed a little bit darker, than the first movie for some reason. And it's not that it was that much darker, but like the creatures were cool, but this idea of like a team dynamic with dire stakes. I mean, the best I can think of that I ever got to feel something like that was like sports. I mean, it's not like I want to be chased by a bunch of, stormtroopers in real life or anything, or shot at, because I don't. But when you're a kid, like you think that stuff is so cool to be a hero. And it's not just to be a lone ranger. It was to do this with some people that you care about. And it didn't hurt that I had a huge crush on Princess Leia. So there you go.
Who didn't?
Right. Yeah. I appreciated that aspect of it too, that the struggle that the heroes have, and every one of them too. Luke he's having a lousy day. I mean, he got attacked by a wampa, about knocked his face off, and now he's on this swamp planet being hassled by this little green goblin who turns out to be the Jedi Master. And then the Jedi Master sitting there telling him like, yeah, I'm not training this kid. He can't do it, And then the training, he's failing at the training. Like he just doesn't get it. So you're seeing, Luke Skywalker struggle. You're seeing Han. He's getting his ship, blown up everywhere he goes. He can't outrun this Empire. And at the end of it, he gets captured and he's frozen and taken away.
That was scary.
And then Luke gets his hand cut off, and just when you're a kid and you're watching movies, and like I said, I watched Jedi first, and that's the one I really watched a whole bunch of. And you're seeing your heroes are shooting everybody like it's no problem, and then you start watching Empire, and you're like,
these guys are losing.
They're losers. They're getting their butts kicked. And I think as a kid, that doesn't resonate as fun. So, but, as you get older, you really appreciate the development and how it's pushing the story along. And it's making each character's story. It's just setting it up for the next movie and for the payoff. And you don't know what's going to happen. I'm trying to imagine being older and watching Empire for the first time, being more of a teenager and seeing how this movie ends and knowing that I've got to wait 3 years to find out what's going to happen here,
And that's another thing which made this trilogy great was part 2. They all failed. You saw Luke get his butt kicked. You saw, just everything what Drew said. And that's why, and I'm just going to touch on it for a second. That's why the sequels weren't that great, because your hero shows up at the end, never knowing anything about the Force or anything like that, grabs a lightsaber and takes on a guy who's been training with the Force since he was a kid. And part 2, she's unstoppable. And then beginning of part 3, she's chopping trees in half and using Force. And it's just like, where did all this come from? It's been 3 weeks, where, Luke, he doesn't even learn he doesn't do anything with the Force in the first one, except for talk to, or he didn't even talk to him. Obi-Wan talks to him, part 2, an episode or Empire. That's the first time he gets, he's just barely
uses it. Yeah.
At the last second, where, that didn't happen in the sequels. I'm not going deep into it, but so that, they were human. They weren't superheroes. They were normal people who screw up, either make a joke about it or get mad and then move on. And they learn from their mistakes and then move on from there.
What I like about Luke's arc, what you just mentioned, was that he does start off as a hero, as a pilot. He's a good pilot. But other than that, like as a Jedi, like, you don't have any reason to think that this kid is going to win. And that goes on for 2 movies. And I liked him, but yeah, you see him fight like a warrior and not believe in himself, or you know, the struggle they introduced with him that hits me as an adult is when he was talking to Yoda on Dagobah and he has to face Vader. And what, I don't know if that's a vision or what, but when basically he's tested to see, like, are you going to lose control the way that Vader lost control? Are you going to be able to face him? Because if you attack him and kill him, like, you're actually really destroying yourself. That it was so freaky when he slices off Vader's helmet on Dagobah, and you see that face there on the ground. And as a kid, I thought, oh, like, he killed himself. Like, it was a haunting image. You kind of forget about that scene because it's not mentioned much in Jedi. But you fast forward to Jedi, he's a more mature character. Like, just watch how he carries himself.
Yeah,
he has
different.
Obviously had a true arc, and now you start to believe that he can do it. And then he still almost loses control and kills Vader, almost. And when he's screaming and beating Vader with a lightsaber when he's down, that part is still like one of the most emotionally climactic scenes I can think of in cinema. It's old. It's in the 80s. It's got old effects, but I watch it and it just blows me away. So he almost loses it. And that is like a direct tie into that Dagobah scene, right? Like, he held on by a hair and he did the right thing and saved the galaxy. That, if he had not done that, then Vader doesn't redeem himself either. So it kind of becomes this positive circle. Like, he held back and did the right thing. Well, that caused someone else to change, who was basically like a mass murderer, right? Vader is comparable. I remember a year ago we made a YouTube short where we were talking about how interesting and provocative it was for them to take a character like Vader and give him that arc where he changed from participating in blowing up Alderaan and blowing up planets and killing all these people to, at the end, he puts an end to basically his life's work. He kills the Emperor. Well, he had a complete change of heart for who knows why. Maybe connecting with his son. We don't really know. But I mentioned where he started out that they basically took like a Nazi officer character or a Hitler type character, and they give him a redemption arc, which was really interesting to me, again, on a spiritual theme, because that's an idea that comes from like Christianity, that anybody can be redeemed no matter how bad, right? Well, man, people were really upset that I had compared Vader, this villain that we think is so cool in the movie, to a war criminal like that. But that's kind of what he is.
What he was.
100%.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think makes Jedi
blew up
more
a
powerful.
planet.
Because like,
well, not only
oh,
that,
this guy turned around. That is a powerful thing. I loved it, but they had to defend him. It's like, no, it's okay, dude. He has a more powerful story by being horrible and then becoming this redeemed character.
It wasn't just him blowing up Alderaan. He slaughtered children.
Yes, they forget that too.
It started back in 3. I mean, during that,
Fifth.
he was Vader at that time. Didn't have the suit on, but he was Vader, and he slaughtered children. This guy is a mass murderer. He is seriously a war criminal.
Yeah, he is a Hitler archetype.
Yes, and he did turn and do the right thing to make amends, I guess, or try to do the right thing by taking out the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
But I still don't think that you can be redeemed. I don't think it's like, oh, okay, you killed the Emperor, you all is forgiven.
Well, in the eyes of the law, no.
Yeah, justice still has to exist, right?
Exactly.
But
if he would have survived, he should have been serving some prison.
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
But I think he knew it was just like, okay, either I can live and be what I am now, or I can sacrifice myself, because he knew that as soon as he picked him up, you know, the electricity would probably transfer to him. You saw him getting through him up, and he's just like, you know, I've been around for long enough. Let's go out on a good note. Yeah. So,
oh man, I don't want to like poop on my theory here, but did he actually do that because he turned good, or just to save his son? Is it just like a priorities thing? You don't want to watch your son die.
Save Luke.
He saved Luke, knowing that Luke was not going to go to the dark side.
Well, and Luke was right and rewarded for believing that he still had some humanity in him. I don't know that I could have done that in that situation and think, well, this guy, like if he had done that much wrong, I don't know that I'd try to convince him to. I would see him as past the point of being convinced by me, but it made for an amazing story. I was trying to give the movie props by saying this, but I don't know. Maybe it's hard for us. We just don't realize how bad some of these fictional villains are, because they're cool and they're on the screen and we're not living it in real life, you know. But if you knew Darth Vader in real life, you wouldn't like him. That's just the nature of writing a good villain, or that's the nature of movies, right? It's not real life.
Yeah.
So I don't blame anybody for being a big Vader fan. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because I loved Vader as a kid.
Oh yeah, Vader is he's the ultimate bad guy, I think.
Probably the greatest of all time.
Yeah. There's a very interesting
Or
scene.
Biff.
Well, one or Biff, yeah. Going back to your cave scene. That one, when even watching that, I always tried to figure out exactly what's the meaning of this. He asked Yoda, "What's I feel cold and I feel death here," and Yoda says, "Well, that place has got a lot of dark side in it, and you have to go in and face it." Right. So when Luke asks what's in there, Yoda says, "Only what you take with you." So the first thing you do is, he's putting his weapons, and he says, your weapons, you're not going to need them, but he takes them anyway. So this is like
that's a bad start.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's like, okay, well, now you're taking your weapons in. So now you're prepared to fight. But I always wonder, it's like, only what you take with you is what you're going to find in there. So Yoda's basically saying, if you take fear in there with you, that's what you're going to find. If you're taking hatred, that's what you're going to find. So I'm wondering if like Luke had walked into that cave with, like, I'm thinking of puppy dogs and, sunshine and stuff.
I don't think he had puppy dogs in the Star Wars universe.
I know, but I'm just saying, okay, so he's got like, little.
I'm kidding.
Tauntauns are happily frolicking in the snow.
Whatever those little bird things are.
Porgs, yeah.
That were on Luke's planet.
If he goes in there with these thoughts, is he going to run into Vader? Like, because anything could have been in there, but he went in with fear in his mind, and that's why Vader shows up. And what's the first thing Luke does is he ignites his lightsaber. He's like, okay. And then the shot when they showed Luke's face inside the helmet, that's the other thing that was always like, is that just when I was a kid, I thought, because now I knew the big reveal that Luke, Vader's your father.
Spoiler
alert. That's what I always thought
catch
was
that at that point.
Yeah, see, that's what I always thought it was, like, oh, they're just showing that, Vader's your father. And now, I got older, I realized he was showing that you keep this way, that's going to be you. You are going to be Vader. You are going to go down that path. And that's like the main theme of everything that Yoda says to Luke on Dagobah. Don't go here. Don't do this. Don't give in to hate. It's faster. It's quicker. It's easier to use, but you can't use it. And so I always like that, little cave scene. And then in Jedi, the other, I think, a really cool, important scene between him and Vader is when he turns himself in and they're talking about, like, you're going to go see the Emperor, and Luke tries, like, hey, come with me. There's good in you. I know your name used to be Anakin. And when he says, Vader says, no, I'm going to turn to the Emperor. He's your master now. And Luke says to him, then my father is truly dead, and walks away. You can almost see, Vader's got a mask on, so you can't see facial emotions, but his body language, you can see right there that, like, that stung him, like there's a little bit of hope in there that like he has this humanity, and his son just says, "My father is dead," and you could see him kind of like, "Oh man, that hurt." Like, so it kind of gives you a little glimpse that, hey, maybe there is some good in this guy. I just like that scene a lot. I just think that's a really neat scene.
Yeah. And moving into, I was going to say just real quick, moving into Jedi, we kind of talked about it in Empire. In Jedi, they weren't perfect either. You know, Luke gets his hand shot when he's rescuing Han. Leia gets shot. Right?
Chewie almost gets set on fire.
Yeah. R2 gets shot. You know, they get captured by Ewoks.
Almost get eaten.
Yeah. You know, again, they didn't just walk in and like go in slow motion and take everyone out. They were tripping over their feet. I mean, you know, they're trying to blow up the shield generator, and they screw that up and get captured. And, you know, the only reason they get out of that was because of the awesome Ewoks. And, you know, so again, they're not superheroes. They are normal human, or whatever they call them in their universe, heroes.
It's a great line.
Insane.
Yeah, it's a great line when they are reunited in Jabba's palace, and Han said, "How we doing?" And Luke says, "Same as always." And Han's like, "That bad, huh?"
Like, great line. Yeah. Great banter.
Like,
I mean,
we're in over our heads.
Yeah, they're you know, they're almost like the Suicide Squad out there. They just keep messing up, but they are good enough to get past it and beat it. Unlike everything else where everything happens easily and, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why, again, the original trilogy was so powerful, because that person's like me. You know, I've screwed up plenty. So, you know, I can still make it through this.
Yeah.
But anyway, I wanted to point that out, because the whole trilogy is them just tripping over their feet. You know, the movies are much funnier than they're given credit for, too.
It's got some...
That line right there was funny, and just not cheesy funny, and not, oh, there goes R2 again.
Yeah, they didn't have to rely on slapstick at all, except maybe in the Ewok stuff. But even then, like, you see teddy bears getting blown up. Like,
I guess, yeah,
they take that and they make it dark.
Yeah.
They have that one where Wicket, he's swinging the thing and wraps himself up. That's, you know, that's for the joke. But it's, I don't know, it's they're just so much fun to watch. Like, it was just on TV, of course, over the weekend. You know, it was on, so I had to sit down and watch them again, and for the 1000th time. And, you know, even though I can do the entire dialogue to all these movies with, you know, off the top of my head, it just never gets old. Like, I could just sit down at any point and watch these movies. They're so good. Now, I think I'm past the point where I'm like noticing things for the first time. Sometimes you like see a movie so many times, you come across something like, you know what, I never have seen that before, and I don't know how I never caught that. I think I'm past that point with Star Wars. I don't think there's anything left to surprise me. Like, oh, I never caught that before. I have caught about everything, but it's still just a blast to watch.
I just like being in the world, like whether it is the movie or the game, and even the movies that I don't enjoy as much, there are things about the world that I enjoy. Of course, that just makes me want to go back and watch something that I do like Empire. But there is a universe here that Lucas built that was incredibly impressive. And as a kid, some of the things, I touched on, like, now I'm older, I understand the deeper themes. I see more interesting things in the films than I did. But as a kid, some of the stuff that stuck out to me so much is still my favorite, and it's the monsters, like the Wampa in Planet Hoth. Planet Hoth was an awesome scene. That was my favorite part of that movie. But the Rancor in Return of the Jedi, I don't know why. I just loved that they brought almost a little bit of horror into space. And I'd never seen that before as a kid. Yeah, I loved the Ewoks. They weren't particularly scary or anything, but
they should be. They
it's
eat
just
people.
yeah. If you think about it, they're cannibals, you know. But
No, they're not
the
cannibals. They're not
creatures,
eating
well,
each
yeah,
other.
No, they're
they eat
eating humans. And then they
Yeah,
fed
they're
those
like a
humans.
lion.
They fed those dead stormtroopers to the rebels on the celebration. Where do you think they got? We're eating these steaks. Where'd you get this meat from? And there's all these dead pilot stormtrooper uniforms.
Oh, I never caught that.
Oh yeah,
man,
I guaranteed Han, Lando, Leia, they ate stormtrooper.
They probably had some stuff in the movie. I mean, Lando came down. Well, the entire Rebel fleet came down, so I'm sure they had some human food. And if not, you just cook up Admiral Akbar and have some calamari.
Yeah, I love all those creatures.
Oh, you fry it.
You fry it, deep fried.
Remember we had those little rings. Yeah.
I'm probably allergic to Akbar.
Could be.
Even the trash compactor monster. I enjoyed
Dianoga.
that scene. That's my favorite part of that movie, probably, because that was creepy.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, well, I mean the original cantina scene, man. Even watching that as a little kid, I remember a few of those things creeped me out. Man? Huh?
Remember the Wolfman?
Wolfman.
No longer in it.
I don't know why, but I mean, it's cheesy now looking at it. But the one who scared me the most was the dude who just had the devil horns on his head.
Oh, yeah, the Devronian guy.
Yeah,
it's bad that I know the species names.
Oh, of course you do.
No, man, you're the
you're
the expert
what species am I? By the way, my name.
Huh?
What species is Hemdazan? Or do you even recognize that name?
Hemdazan. I don't know that name.
He's the first monster you see. He's the one that pops up and goes.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay, so I did learn something new today. I knew that. All right.
But they don't say his name in the movie, so it's not like you'd catch that in the movie. Yeah, I mean, for the past, first 40 years of my life, I thought that little thing was called Snaggletooth, but apparently he has a name now too.
He's got a name. Yeah, it's not Hammerhead. His name is Mamalnadon. It's Mamalnadon. That's his name. The Wolfman that they took out, Savlivrak.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Nerd. But you mentioned the Wampas. There was a cool, actually a funny scene that they cut out during the attack on the Hoth base.
Oh yeah, I've seen this.
They come in as the Empire attacks. A bunch of Wampas were supposed to attack as well. So the rebels weren't only getting away from the Empire; they were trying to run away from Wampas too. But you just didn't have the budget to do it. But there was one cut scene where there was a sign on the door that said "Do not enter," and C-3PO is walking through, and he looks over and just tears the sign down and keeps walking away. And the stormtroopers come run up. They open the door, and a Wampa reaches out and grabs one of the stormtroopers. The other stormtrooper closes the door. Is like, on to the next.
Yeah. They do. You can hear it referenced in Empire because they said, it's when the probe droid's down there, it's metal. So then it couldn't be one of those creatures. So at that point, they had already kind of battled the creatures. So Leia makes that comment in Empire.
Oh yeah.
But it looked horrible.
Yeah,
you see the footage of it. It is
like a stick with fur on it.
Oh my god!
He goes, ah.
Yeah, and then they had like a full costumed one, and it doesn't even look like the same Wampa that attacked Luke or the Wampa that was in the cave, because that Wampa and the one that attacked Luke, they look different. They just could not get the look to match up from scene to scene.
But yeah, you're talking, this is 1978, 77 when they're shooting this. So
yeah,
they just.
But the creature development throughout the movies actually came a long way, because by the time you got to Jedi, it was.
Oh, Jabba was excellent.
Jabba was so well done, and I think it took 8 guys or something to operate him.
Jabba in the original Return of the Jedi is better than any other Jabba that they ever made CGI.
Yeah. Yeah, I was disappointed every time I saw him and he was CGI.
Even when I think they've done it 3 or 4 times.
3 times they've changed it,
scary.
And it's never good.
He was truly scary as a puppet. He was not scary when they did it with computers.
See, that's one of the other things that makes the original trilogy so much better than any of the other movies. And I got to throw Rogue One in here with the original trilogy. I know it's came years later, but Rogue One fits in with the original trilogy so well.
It ends 5 minutes
right
before
it's the way it was filmed. Everything that you see on that screen looks real. Like I can touch that. You know, Jabba is right there. I can touch Jabba. In the special edition, you can tell he's CG. He's not there. The creatures, when they're all CG, they're not there. But in Jedi and in all of the original trilogy and even Rogue One with the masks, they look real. Like I can actually go to that planet. I could go to that place. You know, they are actually in sand. They are in snow. They're in the forest. And then when you look at the other ones, it's like, now they're in a studio with a green screen. It just takes away that
in a green screen.
It just like the original, this prequel trilogy. I felt like I was watching a cartoon the whole time.
Yeah.
But with this one, everything looks real because they filmed in these locations. And I think that's part of the magic of why it draws you in, because these look like places you could go visit. And I mean, I guess technically you can go to the Redwood Forest and walk around and pretend you're on Endor, or go to Tunisia, and the Lawrence homestead is still standing.
Norway.
And Masa Espa is still standing. The sets. And that's what made this trilogy so great. And even with the creature designs and the costumes and the puppets and stuff, I would take those any day of the week over a CG Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah.
Even though I know it's a puppet, it still looks better. The puppet Yoda looks better than the CG Yoda. And I get why they had to do a CG Yoda, because you can't have a puppet Yoda fight with a lightsaber. But he still looks better.
You know, then those Tauntauns were kind of cool too. And like 10 years ago, I had this genius idea after I watched Empire again. And you know how Han Solo has to cut open the Tauntaun with a lightsaber to put Luke inside so he doesn't freeze, and wrap him in the Tauntaun's innards. Yeah. I was like, oh, we could make a killing making Tauntaun sleeping bags. And you open it up,
already out there,
and there's the guts. So then I thought about that for like a couple years. This is amazing. Then I find out, like, yeah, somebody's already done that. Sleeping bags, and you open it up and you see all the organs of the Tauntaun.
Every good idea we've ever had's already been done.
Especially related to Star Wars.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to come up with something. We had a great idea. Tony and I had a great idea for a Coca-Cola commercial when we were in high school. We were getting ready to do the trilogy. Yeah, we were sitting in gym class, and I had a Coke. I was allowed to drink Coke in gym class. And it was a bottle, and it was sitting on the floor in front of me, and I couldn't reach it. And I just had my hand out like this, like, trying to bring it to me like it was his lightsaber. And then it hits, like, they got this new, the special editions are coming out. And what if they had Luke hanging upside down in the Wampa cave, and you think he's reaching for his lightsaber, and all of a sudden there's a Coke bottle right next to it, and he sees it, and then that starts to move, and that shoots up to him. And while he's hanging upside down, he's trying to take a drink of Coke, and then you hear the Wampa roar off camera, and he kind of like stops. He gives one of those like that, and then you cut it like, oh, I should have gotten the lightsaber instead. Not a genius Coca-Cola commercial.
Of course, right? You could just have them stand up and be like, here. And then the Wampa drinks it. And then they're best friends.
They have a Coke and a smile. And then don't finish it. And then, so we thought about that. And then it turns out, I think they probably already have done something like that anyway.
Probably.
Yeah. But.
Well, if we're ready to wrap up, I do have one last deep cuts question for you.
Sure.
Do we recommend it?
Is that I don't think we need to go through that.
No. Did you catch what I did in the countdown video? The deep
I saw the subliminal messages.
Spliced in.
I saw the subliminal messages. I'm sitting there looking at that, and I see and it's that cooking show. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What was that?
From the Star Wars Holiday Special?
Yeah. Oh my God, it's crunchy or
Whipster. Yeah,
Yes,
I wondered if
got
that would make you guys laugh. I didn't want to tell you I was going to do it.
Yeah,
I saw you laughing in the little screen as it was loading up. I was like,
yeah.
And I was like, oh no, Doug's looking down. He's missing them. Because
Well,
the
I was looking
first
at
one
you
was
laughing.
that song.
When this comes on, you'll see, if you go back and watch it, you'll see Doug and I kind of looking at each other like, did you see that? I was like, what?
Well, I believe 2 weeks from today, we're going to be live again on May 20th, Monday, 8:30 p.m. Central Time, talking Rogue One live. So if you want to join us, hop online, throw your comments and questions in the YouTube comments, and we will talk about them. It'll be fun.
And I know this has only been an hour 25, and honestly, I could continue to go on for another 3 hours on this.
Easy.
So
yeah,
if we didn't cover something that maybe you wanted to hear or discuss, let us know, and
maybe we'll
be more than happy to do this
next
again.
year. Yeah, I mean we're doing Star Wars stuff every May, but we're going to run out at some point, so we might as well come back and talk about some stuff we may have missed.
Yeah,
little things like in Empire Strikes Back, the Emperor was some dude with monkey eyes projected on him.
Actually,
chimpanzee.
Actually, that was a lady.
Was it a lady?
Yeah, it was a male voice, but that was actually a lady with prosthetics on.
Oh, Clive Revel provided the voice.
The face lady
was Marjorie Eaton.
Marjorie, not Margaret.
With
Marjorie.
chimpanzee eyes superimposed over her.
That was the original Emperor.
Interesting. I didn't know it was one until I just read that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have plenty to talk about with this movie over the years.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me, and thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
May the Force be with you always,
and also with you,
but more with you.